Joining us today is physicist, author, and founder of the Synchronicity Institute, Mr. Sky Nelson-Issacs. Sky, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Simon. Thank you.
Sky, I thought we could start by having you share a little bit about the Synchronicity Institute and how you got involved in this type of work and what it is that calls you to it.
The Synchronicity Institute was a business that I started a year ago. And the point of it is to extend and formalize the work that I've been doing. I've been interested in synchronicity as an idea, as a phenomenon, as something we experience on a daily basis for over 20 years. As I experienced more of unexpected coincidences, lucky breaks, being in the right place at the right time, or sometimes the wrong place at the wrong time, and trying to understand how those situations come up and if there's any connection between the choices I'm making and the way that I'm personally experiencing the world. If there's a connection between that and the types of experiences that come into my life. So this has been a personal interest of mine for a long time, based on a background exploring some spiritual traditions as well as science as a physicist in college and in graduate school. And then over the past 10 years, I got more into doing research on it from a formal point of view. And I had been interested in the physics of these concepts earlier, but not in relationship to synchronicity. I just saw them as a separate interest. And gradually I came to see that these two fields of trying to understand quantum mechanics and trying to understand why certain situations would happen in my life at just the right moment, that maybe there was a reason I was interested in both of them. And maybe there was a connection. And as I think Feynman or one of these folks said, just because there's two mysteries doesn't mean they're the same mystery.
Yes.
My work is trying to show that this one mystery of quantum mechanics and this other mystery of how do our lives get woven together in ways that are meaningful, and how do we form purpose out of the disparate experiences of our life, that those are actually related questions. And I try and do that in a really rigorous way by doing, the Synchronicity Institute does formal research. We have a paper right now that's in peer review that we're trying to establish as the foundation of what we study. And then this phenomenon is so personal, and it's so important, I think, at this time in history for people to see the connection between what we're thinking and feeling and choosing and the world that we have. Because sometimes it can feel really frustrating to be like, I didn't choose this world. How does what's going on right now, reflect my choices? And I think that in my life, I've come to see ways in which there are some connections, some ways in which, yes, in fact, I chose a certain path and then it's sort of led to where I am right now. So I'm trying to illuminate some of those hidden connections that we can easily miss. And so the Synchronicity Institute does both the academic research and then tries to formalize or make that less formal so that people who aren't scientists can get something from it and make a difference in the way that they see the world.
I love that. Let's start right at the basics. What is synchronicity for those that haven't maybe come across the term too much before or have only just really touched on it?
A synchronicity is a meaningful coincidence. That was Carl Jung's definition, the psychologist. And it can be any number of things. It doesn't have to be like, I don't focus on things like dreams as much, although I've had plenty of dreams that sort of relate to my real life, or like sort of have this strange parallel version of reality. But Carl Jung studied those kinds of synchronicities. I focus really on my definition of a synchronicity is a meaningful experience, which is meaningful because it leads to an experience you're seeking to have.
Okay.
So it's an experience we have in the moment that might seem disconnected. It might seem like, well, why is this person handing me this flyer right now? Flyer with some information about an event that's happening. And then, a day later, you have a flyer on the kitchen table and your partner says to you, I'm thinking about going to this thing and it's the same type of event. And you make the connection. Oh, I got this flyer yesterday because it led to an experience I was going to have today, having this conversation with my partner. Or let me give you an example that happened to me more recently. I was going to head out for some work meetings across the city. So I was going to be gone all day. And I was looking for my earbuds to bring with me so I could do stuff in the car, And I'm looking all over the house and I can't find them. And I asked my wife if I can borrow her earbuds. And my wife's earbuds are very nice. So she says to me, she says, yeah, you can borrow my earbuds, but just don't mess them up. And I'm like, okay, kind of sheepishly, like, I'll try not to mess up your earbuds. And I take her earbuds and I go grab a shirt and I'm looking through my shirts and I pick one I haven't worn in probably a year. But for some reason I grabbed it that day and I put it on and I walk out to the car and I'm putting on her earbuds and I reach in my pocket, this kind of pocket on the shirt, and there's my earbuds. And how did I find that shirt on that particular day, 6 months or a year after I had last worn it, when I needed the thing that was in the pocket? So I walked back inside, gave her back her earbuds and said, "You keep them."
And breathed a sigh of relief.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not on the hook anymore. So it's, how do these events happen? And at just the right moment, how do we find the right shirt that we need to wear on that particular day? Or how do we meet the right person at the airport or at the conference that we're at to make a connection that we need for the next phase of our life, for our business?
And how do we be cause in the matter of that? Like is there any conscious choice that can be involved in this, or is it just a matter of fate or circumstance?
That's a good question. And it's really the central question. I find that you can't predict synchronicity. I've used the tagline, expect synchronicity, for a long time, because you can live in a way that sort of paves the way for synchronicity. And this is a way of living maybe with more faith or more confidence. Like, I'm going to take these first steps and I don't know how it's going to fall into place, but I'm going to expect some kind of synchronicity to show up to follow on and help me solve this problem when the time comes. So there's a way in which when we live this way, we can have more confidence in what we're doing and trust to be able to start to imagine how some of these events can happen. How can a problem be solved in ways that we can't foresee? Sometimes we make plans based on only what we can see. And it's pretty hard to imagine other ways that could just spontaneously, things could change, like what we're going through right now with the world environment and COVID. It's hard to envision how things can change spontaneously, and yet the world has an infinite variety of ways, of wrenches it can throw in your path.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think we can get to become more familiar with the types of experiences that can show up. And ultimately, I think what we can do as people is become more purposeful. I think that we're here in this life to learn and to grow and to become better at what we do, to up-level our experience. And the more we live from that perspective of, what am I going to learn from this situation? How is this obstacle going to help me grow or help me redirect my business plan in a new way that I really need, actually? And I find that synchronicities always show up to help me do that. They don't always show up to help me run my business or help me make more money. It's usually about some kind of real growth or real escalation of the stakes, helping us live bigger lives. And so if we can align our choices as people and our choices as a company with what's in alignment with growth, what's in alignment with raising the stakes, what's in alignment with learning from life, then we can find that, yes, indeed, synchronicities show up, and bigger profits and better momentum is all part of that if we're in alignment like that.
Yeah. And so it's beautiful. I mean, there's so much that's going through my head right now of, the old Zen proverb, which is, let go or be dragged, or let go and let flow, that notion of just, having that, having a clear focus on that purpose and then trusting the process, really just trusting, what I really loved about what you said is that there are, so often I see entrepreneurs, business leaders, managers, wanting to work out the game plan to the nth degree and control all factors and circumstances and possible events that could take place, as opposed to being very clear on the outcome that they want to what they want to produce, not necessarily be attached to the way in which they get there, and then trust the process. Would that be accurate?
Right. Yeah. So I would say synchronicity is the agile human experience.
Yeah. Well put.
And the word I use to describe what you called looking at the outcome, is what I call anticipated qualitative experience.
Say a bit more about that.
Every choice we make is an action, right? We put, our choices translate into something that we do. And that action not only works in the present moment, it doesn't just solve problems like right here today at 4:30 p.m. It sets a target. It sets a qualitative target of how we want to feel at the end of this film strip that we're living right now. How we want to feel tomorrow or next week. And so when I invest time in preparing for a meeting, I'm setting a target that's sort of, I can't claim it's not in some place in the room or something. It's this abstract sort of target in the future of how I want to experience life after this meeting occurs that I'm preparing for. And when we set that target, here's the key point. It's good to plan ahead. Of course, everybody should be thinking about future targets. But here's the key idea. This is where synchronicity comes in. When we take an action and we have an anticipation of an experience we want to have, a way we want to feel, it's not necessarily I want to anticipate making more money. It's I want to anticipate feeling successful and feeling confident, and making more money helps me do that. But it's the feeling that I'm really anticipating that's driving me to take the action. And when we do that, that action and that target in the future sets the path for us. It sort of fills in the path with opportunities that help us get there. And that's what we call synchronicities. Those are the experiences that happen, which might even seem really out of the blue, but they lead to an experience we want to have. Yeah. Because they're if you think of life as a tree, they're sitting there on the branch, but up above them on that same branch is the apple that we're going for.
Yeah, which that leads me into one of the diagrams I saw on your website, which I absolutely loved, was the tree of possibility. Could you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one of the basic mathematical forms in quantum mechanics is a tree. A tree represents something that starts at the bottom as a whole and then starts to branch into many different branches. And those branches represent, in quantum mechanics, they represent the different possible things you could measure. And they're exclusive of each other. You either measure this or you measure that. And then there's this theory that goes even further, which is the multiverse theory, or the many worlds hypothesis, which says each of those branches represents a certain reality, and there's many different possible realities that we could be in. I'm okay with that model as long as you don't think that there's actual physical versions of you elsewhere in the universe, replicating a different set of choices. That's totally unnecessary. What this is an informational set of possibilities of all the things you could choose. And as you make your choices, there's key moments like branching points where it does matter whether you go left or right on the tree. Because on the left, there's a whole bunch of apples. And on the right, there's not a whole lot of apples. Maybe that left is like, I prepare a lot for this meeting, and on the left, I do well in the meeting, and my manager or my client is really excited, and they bring me into the next project. And that's a whole bunch of apples that leads to. And then I keep moving down that path and I build momentum. So we can build momentum on the tree by making key choices at specific moments that lead us toward places that have more opportunity. And not studying and not preparing for that meeting might lead me on the other tree branch, which doesn't have those opportunities because I don't do as well, and it doesn't lead to new options. So this tree helps us visualize the process of setting those targets. The apples on the tree are targets that we have set through our choices. And let me give you two examples. If I am spending a lot of time investing in my work by spending time at home at night, diving into stuff and preparing, I might be not focusing on my relationships at home. And so I'm investing in work, and the apples on the tree are all going to be related to work. And I'm going to have lots of opportunities start to happen with my work, where somebody invites me to a conference or invites me onto a new project. And I can expect, like I was talking about, I can expect opportunities to show up, which help me further my mission, further my objectives. But there's no apples on the tree related to my relationship because I'm not investing in that. So if I want to invest in my relationship and I realize I've got some other part of my life I've got to really commit to, that would be a different type of fruit. That would be like a pear. So I'd take different actions and I'd start to see where the pears are on the tree. And there's different branching points that I got to choose differently. Like maybe at this time, I got to choose to spend an evening with my family watching a movie instead of working. And that shifts the momentum towards a different set of goals. So ultimately, flow is about, synchronicity is about how do we build momentum toward a certain outcome? How do we get opportunities for things that we want by building momentum through our effort, through our investment of action? But flow is about how do you use that to support all the areas of your life, all the aspects of who you are. So you're not getting out of balance with your work or your family or your personal or your physical health. You're able to find the underlying happiness that comes from really honoring all those parts of who you are. That's what flow allows us to do.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm going to dig deeper into flow because that's something that we're really interested in exploring together. I'm just going to jump back a bit and say you touched on the purpose or the goal, the outcome being ultimately an experience that we're looking to experience through life. And fundamentally, life is just one constant series of emotional and physical experiences. So those apples that we talk about on the tree, are they the experiences that we're looking to achieve or fulfill on? Is that what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the inner experience. It's not, I want to go rock climbing or I want to go hang gliding. It's, I want to feel exhilaration.
What's that emotional experience? Yeah.
Yeah. And so a really important part of living this way is starting to let go of the specifics, like you were saying, let go and let flow. Let go of the specifics of how you want things to show up and focus on the apples, which are the inner experience that you're having. And so you might set a business goal and find that you actually reach the personal experience of that goal, but it looks really differently than you thought.
Yeah.
It might be a different client that's successful or a different product or a different amount of money, but it leaves you with the same sense of fulfillment. And seeing that connection is really helpful towards being able to use this effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really important point to drill down on for the entrepreneurs that are listening or watching the show, in that when they've got their vision for their companies and they go out to launch and scale, it's what's that being really clear, not just on the physical purpose or what they want to achieve in the world, but what is it that they're looking to fulfill on internally, and what's that emotional experience they're looking to experience.
Yeah, so the Living in Flow course that I offer, which is an online video course, goes into exercises that really focus on the inner experience that we have. And a lot of times the inner experience that we have gets in the way of flow because, flow, you might be familiar with the work of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi and Stephen Kotler's Flow Genome Project and how we physically experience flow and moving through the experiences of our lives. But flow is also an emotional process. And when we block an emotion that we don't want to have, it's really a quick way to get out of flow. Like if my manager says to me, please don't ever break the stapler again, and it causes an emotional experience of me of shame or some kind of embarrassment or defensiveness, and I can't get over that, I immediately might shut down and get quiet and not be in flow anymore. I won't have access to my creative energy that I was going to contribute to the meeting. And so the faster we can identify what is going on for us emotionally as a layer that filters out who we are, the faster we can, I help develop tools for you to let go of those things and identify them so that you can get right back into flow and back into your zone of creativity.
Yeah, awesome. So would you subscribe to the theory that, the purpose of feelings and emotions are to be felt and to actually be experienced? And the sooner that you do that, the sooner you experience those emotions, the sooner they are allowed to pass through and get you back into that flow state.
Yeah, and I would also say that that's so important because a lot of folks in the world today, I think, don't think that they feel anything. I mean, that's,
they almost take pride in that, really.
Yeah.
Some of them.
Yeah. And we all feel stuff all the time. So if I like going to a baseball game, I like it because it makes me feel good. If I like eating ice cream or eating, pizza, it's because it makes me feel good. We do everything we do because it makes us feel a certain way. And a lot of times the things that we don't like to do or the things we're unable to hear in terms of criticism or in terms of growth, things that can help us grow and have a better relationship with our spouse or a better relationship with our boss or with our employees. Those things are also related to what we're feeling that we may not even be recognizing we're feeling. So I find it to be really important and useful to see those emotions happening in real time and feel them. Like by actually feeling them, it's counterintuitive. The quicker you're able to feel them, the less held hostage by them you are.
Yeah.
You get right back into your zone of creativity and you're back in the game.
Yeah, it's amazing. Do you feel that being able to put language to the feelings, to be able to identify the feelings or the emotions or the emotional state is important in the process of letting letting them flow through? Like to be able to say, okay, right now I'm feeling frustrated or angry, or to be able to identify the actual emotion.
I think it's helpful. I think some people would prefer not to go about naming their emotions all the time. And I think that's fine too.
Right.
We don't have to be touchy-feely in all the same ways.
Yes.
It's really about the outcome, right? It's about, if you are not being held hostage by your emotions, great. That's the goal. However you need to get there. For me, has been helpful. It's taken a long time to gain, a level of familiarity with how I self-sabotage myself. What are the feelings that come up when I get sorry for myself or discouraged? And how does that, what triggers that? And how do I stop the process once it happens and get back to work? And so, yeah, for me, like I can recognize now sometimes when I feel some shame, or I feel like a big one for me is I got to do more. What I've done is not enough. And so I over deliver, that kind of thing. So by recognizing that pattern of behavior, it really helps me recognize it and then stop doing it.
I can really hear in that there's a level of self-awareness that needs to be cultivated, to be checking in with oneself to say, okay, what's my current emotional experience right now?
Yeah, and the beautiful thing is synchronicity can help you in that, because life is going to send you experience after experience after experience to help you see these things. That's what I think the purpose of this almost a simulated experience we have is. It's here to show us, here's what you need to learn next. So I'm going to just keep sending you opportunities to learn this thing. So the quicker we can, the more we can listen to our life's experiences without defensiveness and without blaming people for what happens to us, the more we can see in ourselves, oh, here's my reaction when this person shows up late. Yeah, sure. I'm not going to stand for them showing up late anymore. I'm going to cut out that relationship. But meanwhile, I'm having a reaction that's mine. And the sooner I can identify that, the sooner I get stronger into my next level of capacity for tolerating change.
Yeah, it's really
and uncertainty.
Taking that ownership, isn't it? Taking responsibility for how the world is occurring and what's actually showing up in reality as well.
Yeah, and it's beautiful because life brings you those opportunities as quickly as it can. So the more there's a process I call the LORRAX, LORRAX. It starts with listening to life, really. It could be to people, but it could be also just to the situations. Listen to the situation, notice it, and then open your mind. A lot of times we have an immediate judgment of what this means when something happens. Somebody said something to me and I immediately think, well, they're at fault. That was their fault, It's not my fault. I can prove it. But open your mind, like look a little deeper. Maybe there's something you're not aware of. And then reflect on the situation. And this can take a little while. You might take a few days to really think about the situation, and slowly new information will filter into your brain. You'll remember a conversation that you had, or you'll realize, oh, well, no wonder this person is feeling angry at me. I forgot about this other conversation we had 2 months ago where this came up, and it's bad is on me. And I only get that when I reflect enough. And then after I reflect, I might need to release kind of how I thought things were going to go. I might be attached to the situation going a certain way. I have to let that go. So I'm free to then take an action, which is really more in alignment with where I'm trying to go in my life. And it's not reactive in the way that it would have been, because I've actually sat there and learned something from the situation. And finally, the X in LORRAX stands for don't give up. Keep on that cycle, keep looking for opportunities to grow and change.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love it. I love it. Would you say, is reflection, I noticed on the website, meaningful history selection, is that part of that process there, to be able to reflect back and go, that's why they acted, or that's why it responded to, the way it did?
So meaningful history selection is the technical term that I use to describe what I would call, in maybe a more informal way, flexible histories. It's like, and it's because of this process that synchronicities can happen. So from a scientific perspective, it's necessary to describe this process to explain why a synchronicity can happen. How is it that, we can bump into each other at the airport when we didn't plan it and we happen to be going different places, but we really needed to talk to each other? Well, it can happen because of flexibility in histories. Like your history, from my perspective, can happen lots of different ways. And I'll get into more of why this is. I'll explain that. But your history, from my perspective, can happen lots of different ways. And if I choose to go to the airport, then there's a branch of the tree where you go to the airport too. And so meaningful history selection is where, of all the branches that you could be on, I select out the one where you're at the airport because I go to the airport, and that's the more meaningful one. And so it becomes more likely to happen. So those meaningful situations can become more likely to happen based on the choices we make, because we're just selecting out of all the possibilities, those branches which are more aligned with the choices that we want to make.
Yeah, excellent. And so can you dig a little bit deeper about what you just said then?
Yeah. So there's this other concept called retroactive event determination, which is related to, in physics, a phenomenon called the Wheeler's delayed choice phenomenon. And for all you physicists out there, I really try and support this with math and arguments, and these are complex, subtle issues. But the idea is that a system, and I'm speaking like a physicist now, a person outside of your world, outside of your room, is not actually determined yet. By determined, I mean like the paper in front of me is determined, right? It's got a definite, state. It's sitting on my desk.
Form, yeah.
You're there. I can see you. We take for granted that everything is determined. The fact is, though, that all we know is that what we're observing right now is determined. We have a certain perimeter of what we can see, and that's what we know to be real. And we turn on the news and we see that so-and-so is doing this thing across the world, and we assume that that's happening too. If you look at it from an information point of view, all we really know is what we have information about. So as soon as I turn on the news, I gain information coming from the other side of the world, and that becomes part of my reality. So what I ask you to do is look at your world based on only what you actually know to be certain, and then take everything else to be uncertain. It's still real. Other people are real, but it's uncertain. It's undetermined. And this retroactive nature is saying that, well, whether you go to the airport or go to the bus station is undetermined from my perspective, and only becomes determined when we actually meet. It's like by meeting at the end zone, we find that, you must have traveled this path to get here.
Yeah. And what I'm really hearing in that then is infinite possibilities of choice.
Okay, I'm going to correct one word there. So infinite possibilities is a way to overstate it, right? Because there are limited possibilities.
Okay.
But many, many more possibilities than you realize.
Right.
So the possibilities are constrained by what you've already witnessed and experienced.
Okay.
So if you make a decision to run your business one way, you have to deal with those consequences, and you might have infinite possibilities of how you could run it differently in the future, but those are actually constrained by what you've already decided.
Yes.
You have to start from where you are and move forward from there.
Yeah, got it.
So I think that's useful to take it away from woo-woo and say there's not infinite possibilities, but there's a lot more than you probably realize out of all the different ways that history can be flexible to your choices.
I've never thought about it like that. That's
Well, I'm trying to quantify it. You've got to be a little more specific with your numbers.
The physicist comes through. I love it. Sky, in this, what impact or influence does belief and belief systems have in regards to flow and synchronicity?
God, that's such an interesting question, and I don't have a complete answer for you, but it's something I've thought about a lot. I think that I'm writing a new book, and it covers some of this stuff. It goes into the layers of filtering that we have over what we see. We don't perceive the world as it really is. We perceive our emotional response to the world. So when you nod your head, that means something to me, and it creates a certain reaction in me. And if I had a bad experience with that in the past, I would have a different reaction.
That's right. That's right.
So what I'm seeing is what I perceive you to be feeling and doing, not what you're really feeling and doing. So our beliefs really are important in there, right? Because our beliefs tell us how to interpret the world. And then from there, we have an anticipation of some experience, which we were talking about earlier. So if I have the experience of interpreting someone's body movements in a negative way, I might then anticipate that we're going to have a negative interaction, or that they'll be judgmental of me, or that they're not going to like my presentation. I had this experience once where I was giving a presentation, and I had invited someone from the press to this presentation. And in the middle of the presentation, there's this woman in the second row who's looking really bored and frustrated. And I'm like, oh no, is she the woman from the press? And I'm, having all these thoughts go through my head. I'm believing and filtering these particular, things. But I got out of it. Like I pulled myself out of it. I stopped anticipating the experience of, having crash and burn, which could have happened. And afterwards she walks past me and says, that was a great presentation. It was so good to hear you. So clearly my beliefs and my filters were totally wrong for this one person. And so I've learned to sort of not believe what I believe in the world. And because those can then set up, I could have gotten into a cycle where then I believe that she is criticizing me in her head and I try and please her and try and like speak to this person directly. And, that's the kiss of death for public speaking.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. I learned that early on when leading programs. It's, you end up then presenting or facilitating the program for one person in the room, like
and what you think they want.
And what you think, that's right. Yeah. Oh, very good. So not believing what you see necessarily.
Right. Right. And the more we can recognize our own emotions, which are filters that like limit what we experience. They limit the amount of love we can receive. Because, I've had experiences where I've given a great presentation or had a great conversation with someone, but I'm thinking that they're unhappy with me and they're feeling really positive towards me. And I miss out on this whole experience of positivity because I'm in my own story about it. So belief really filters what we can perceive and what we think about the world. And then when we start to anticipate those very experiences, we take actions which I think reinforce our beliefs and make it so people actually feel the things that we're afraid they'd feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a tricky thing about synchronicity. We can actually reinforce our negative perceptions. And that's why it's not a positive thing. Synchronicity is a neutral process, or meaningful history selection is a neutral process. And so it's on us to figure out how we're feeling and how we're using it to not get stuck in negative cycles.
Yeah. And I can hear in that the ability to be able to reframe a belief almost in the moment would make a difference to, the flow of your experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where, your question about being able to name feelings, I think it's a very useful tool to be able to reframe in the moment. Okay. In the past, I felt like I'm going to focus all my attention on this, negative experience, but now I'm just going to say, whatever. I'm not going to think about that right now. I'm going to assume this person has positive feelings for me and I'm going to move forward. And then I'll deal with the repercussions later if I'm wrong. But that kind of reframing can give us the confidence to shift. And then, I have an exercise about this in the Living in Flow course. Once you make that shift one time, and then afterwards you find out that you were wrong in your assessment and the shift was a good one. So this person isn't really mad at you. And in fact, now they're really impressed because you did a great job.
That's right.
Then you can actually go back and heal that part of yourself that was all caught up. Because you can go back and, you were basically worried about something that wasn't true. And what better way could there be to improve our productivity than to stop worrying about things that aren't true?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the technique here is to go back to that experience. Like really transport yourself there. Imagine yourself being in that situation. Allow yourself to feel what it felt like to be there. And by feeling what it feels like, we're actually able to change those feelings. So we remember what it feels like to be stressed and insecure. And then now we bring into our head mentally the realization that this person was actually feeling awesome and actually liking what we were doing. So we're reprogramming that feeling that we had with a new feeling, which is, I can be confident. I can feel good about what I'm doing. And now the next time the situation occurs where I feel like I might be being criticized silently by someone in the audience, I have a different feeling because I have this old feeling of, insecurity, but this new feeling of, but people liked me last time. It's okay. And so we can actually really change when we pay attention to our feelings and start to bring in different feelings in place of the old feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. And I've had, great conversations with neuroscientists in regards to the rewiring then of the brain itself and how that reframing actually then literally rewires the brain to look for different.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing work that neuroscientists have been doing over the past 20 years or whatever it's been to understand this stuff.
And that's what I love about having these conversations with you is the purpose of this show is to bring, some Eastern philosophy to the physics and the psychology and the
Right.
neuroscience and see where it all kind of intersects and comes
Right.
together. We've had siloed studies and research for so many years, and to see the, especially, I have a passion for Buddhist philosophy, and to see the science behind that is, it lights me up.
Well, this is one of the reasons I'm so hopeful about the world right now, because people get really, really discouraged by the feeling that people just don't change. Like, I can't even change my own habits to get up earlier in the morning, or, to control my temper with my kids. How am I going to expect us to change our habits of, globalization or climate change, or, changing the direction of stewardship in businesses? Or these are huge things that we feel powerless to change. And yet we do change, we can change. And when we feel differently about something, we automatically change. This is the importance of feelings, not because we need to get all ooey gooey about, expressing our feelings and honor them or anything, but because when we feel differently about ourselves or our life or the world, we act differently automatically.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to bring distinction to what I was saying before, I definitely wasn't referring to the need to say it out loud, when identifying those emotional, that your emotional state, even just the acknowledgement internally to say, oh, right, just have a quick conversation with yourself, as opposed to the, potentially the new age conversation of expressing your feelings out loud. And, you can do that for sure, but
I say that because I've done a lot of that.
Okay.
I spent a lot of my years expressing and learning about my feelings. And I know that some people, want a more left brain or right brain approach, or left brain approach. So, I try and have all modalities available for people.
Perfect. Sky, on this, I want to just check in the practice of meditation and even visualization when it comes to synchronicity. Where does that fit into the equation?
Well, those are both things that I've definitely done a lot of. I got into meditation when I was in my 20s. I grew up exposed to meditation and yogic philosophy from a young age. My parents were followers of a spiritual teacher from the East. And so it was in my brain that this is something people did. And I had some of the philosophies. I read the Tao Te Ching when I was in high school and really loved that. Got into Buddhism in my 20s because I live near a beautiful meditation center in California, Spirit Rock Meditation Center. And so these are all central to me and my development. And but there are lots of ways to meditate. Meditation is about being present to your experience in the moment. And if you've never done it before and you've never really noticed how you feel in the moment, it takes some structure to do that. Like, you got to pull yourself away from your distractions. And there's so many distractions in our brain, But golf is a form of meditation. Cooking is a form of meditation. Parenting is a form of meditation. Conversations are a form of meditation. But certain conversations are and certain conversations are not, right? Conversations that get to the core of who we are and expressing ourselves as people with people that we trust and care about are types of meditations. Whereas conversations where we're gabbing about, what's that word? I don't even know what it is. Stuff that's not important about other people. Gossip. Yeah.
It's not even in your vocabulary. I love it.
Well, I try not to, but it's about, are we being authentic? And so another way to talk about meditation is finding the authentic. These are just tools for finding out what's authentically true for us. And sometimes for a lot of people, sitting down and being quiet and not thinking as much as possible is a tool. And that's a tool I've used. But I also find that sleep is a great meditation. Sometimes one that I don't do for a while. And I'm like, that I really need to calm myself down and become more present by taking a nap or having some rest.
Yeah. I'm a massive advocate for the afternoon siesta. And I share this with my clients, entrepreneurs that I work with, and having a 2:00, half an hour nana nap or a kip in the afternoon. And one of the things that talk about synchronicity, one of the things that I set myself when I go to sleep is like, great things will happen whilst I sleep. to kind of put
That's great.
my mind at ease, to know that I'm not missing out on anything, that, you know, life's going to continue, and that it doesn't actually require me to be physically doing things for things to transpire and things to continue along in their process. And there's been several instances, more than I could count, where I've had, you know, I call transformational sleeps, where you go and have a kip, because that's what, telling the truth, that's what I need to do in that moment.
Yeah.
And so let's go and have a sleep, and then come back to, you know, a new client or a new guest, or that person that I wanted to speak to for so long, haven't been able to get a hold of, or, you know, all the crazy things that that show up.
Well, another thing I do is I'm a musician. I've been a musician since I was 5, and I love it. And I've written a lot of songs. I'm a songwriter, and my last album, at least 5 or 6 of the songs came out of dreams. So I've had dreams where I'm actually in the dream, and somebody in the dream starts singing to me, or I start singing in the dream. And if I'm lucky, I wake up right away, and some of that is still there, and I can write it down.
That's beautiful.
So those moments can be very powerful. You know, we're connected to something much bigger than ourselves.
100%. I'm going to do this because it's there for me to ask, and I am conscious of time, and your time specifically.
We're good.
At the risk of diving down the rabbit hole a little bit, deja vu. You know, we talked about dreams a little bit, and, you know, having that experience in life where you're like, I've been here before in a brand new environment. Or, I mean, what's your take on that? You may not have an answer.
I'm going to take that a totally different direction.
Okay, good.
I don't have an answer.
Okay, good. That's fine.
But it does remind me of, so I don't study the psychological aspects or what that could really mean. But in the Matrix, the movie, you know, deja vu is a glitch in the Matrix.
It is.
Where something's changed. And if you're thinking about the branches of this tree that we're on, it's like somebody changed which branch you're on discontinuously from here to here. You know, I think that's what's happening in that movie when that happens. Now, in our real life, we can't shift from one branch to another. We have to go from where we are to where we want to be on the tree that we're on. But it's useful to bring up the movie The Matrix, because it actually presents a really useful framework for how I think the world works. Because we talked about this idea of retroactive event determination, where the world around you that you observe right now is your world. And outside of that, everything else is uncertain. Well, what that's like, if you imagine 2 people playing games, if you and I were gamers right now, and I'm in California and you're in Australia, and we have a delay, right? I mean, 10 years ago, this was more of an issue.
Yeah.
Now we got this great connectivity, but we have this delay. The video game is rendered on my screen for me, and your video game is rendered on your screen for you. So you're actually experiencing your world, your version of the world, and I'm experiencing a separate copy of that version of the world that's rendered for me. And when we come into each other's worlds, there's a communication that happens between them, which makes them consistent, so that your game knows where I am and my game knows where you are. And what it feels like is this seamless virtual world that we're both part of. It almost feels like a real world. This actually mirrors how I think, or the mathematics that quantum mechanics, how should I say this? This is what I think quantum mechanics points to. An actual world that behaves like this, where only what we're observing is actually definite. Everything else is related just through these networks, these webs of consistency. So that every person we've met, we're consistent with them, but we evolve into many different branches of the tree relative to each other. And it's amazing then to think about our world as really a virtual-like reality. And I say virtual-like because it is real. It's not a virtual reality. Yeah. It's a real world in which we really have pain and joy and all these things. But it's virtual-like in that things do not have a separate existence from your relationship to them.
And there's that opportunity for determination, for like you said, for choice.
Yeah, and so that leads to an opportunity for choice, where things can actually fall into place 3 different ways based on what you choose. It's like a choose your own adventure novel.
Yeah.
Instead of, it might be a million different ways, it might be 3 different ways, but it's not one different way. It's not like I have to try and guess where you are. I just have to live my life fully, wholeheartedly, with my mind focused on what are my real goals this year? What do I really want to create? Not necessarily the goals that I think I want, but what's underneath those goals? What do I want to experience in my life at a deeper level? How do I satisfy my whole person? And once we have that lined up and we're moving in that direction, we can then take the second step, which is to trust that the things that come our way are the things that we need in order to get there. I've got a great quote from Joseph Jaworski. Joseph Jaworski is a business trainer and entrepreneur who wrote a book called Synchronicity. The subtitle is Leadership, the Hidden Art of Leadership, or something like that. It's a great book. And he actually wrote the foreword for my book, Living in Flow. And Joseph Jaworski said, "The people who come to you are the very people you need in relationship to your commitment. Doors open, a sense of flow develops, and you find you are acting in a coherent field of people who may not even be aware of one another. You're not acting individually any longer, but out of the unfolding generative order."
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a goosebumps. I love it, Sky. And speaking of your book, Living in Flow, The Science of Synchronicity.
There we go.
There we go there. Fantastic. How can someone get a copy of that? And can you maybe just give a little bit of an overview of the book?
Yeah. So you can find this in bookstores all over the place and in Amazon too, if you want. But bookstores, your local bookstore should have access to it. It's still in print and it's distributed internationally. It is called Living in Flow, The Science of Synchronicity and How Your Choices Shape Your World.
Beautiful.
And it starts off with the first 5 chapters looking at the human experience of flow and how synchronicities can show up in your life and lead you to an experience of flow if you pay attention to them. And then the last 2 chapters focus on the science that I've been studying and researching that I think supports this. And so you start off with the easier stuff and then you get to the harder stuff later on for those who can make it through. And the intention is there that it's really accessible to everybody and it's written from an accessibility perspective. And so I've got a quote here I'll read to you. "There's a difference between finding our purpose and finding a sense of purpose. The first phrase implies a very big statement about life's goals, as if there is something we are supposed to be doing with our lives, and we have to find the right thing. I like the second phrase better. I think the universe responds to the choices we make by bringing new events into our lives that match those choices. Therefore, each of our daily actions becomes really important. Making each action purposeful is a habit we can develop. It's like tending a garden. You aren't a factory farm pumping out only one cash crop. You're a community garden, planting different seeds at different times and for different purposes. Some of your actions purposefully build love within your family. Others of your actions invest in your success in your career. Still, other corners of the garden hold seeds you plant purely for the growing of your own joy and fulfillment in life. Finding a sense of purpose focuses more on the sense of part than on the purpose part. The purpose can be any goal or intention you take on, but your sense of purpose is unique to you. Finding a sense of purpose is about finding the essence of yourself in everything you do."
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you for being on the show, Sky. And I'll make sure that I've got the links to Amazon and every opportunity for people, if they want to buy the book, to buy the book. And of course, there's the course as well, the Living in Flow course.
Yeah. So the Synchronicity Institute has a number of different offerings. We created a course called the Living in Flow course, which is available online at the website synchronicityinstitute.com. And it's a course that has 7 modules with 3 videos in each module to give you exercises and practice at peeling back layers of obstacles or self-sabotage that you may be doing in your life and being able to see the target you want to create and whatever the next step is for you to get there without knowing the whole path to get there. So see more synchronicity in your life and how it can benefit you. And we also have a mobile app we're developing right now, which is going to be allowing you to track your own experiences and sort of find the threads of synchronicity in there. We have a series of popular science videos we're creating right now that illustrate a lot of these ideas in very digestible form. And of course, this book and the new book coming out next year. So we're doing a lot to expand. We do research and we try to also do outreach to people. And we're growing right now. So we're looking for people to invest in us as well. So there's an opportunity for that if people are interested.
Fantastic. Well, I love the work that you do and the way in which you articulate and bring it all together. So thanks for your time, Sky. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you, Simon. And thanks for bringing people together to talk about all these important things.